film that when you watch it, you will have chills down your spine. Well, it definitely wasn't chills, but definitely felt something. Chills Down Your Spine, released on October 16th, 2020, comes all the way from the Nebraska film studio Dead Lantern Pictures. This is another anthology film that has taken about 5 years to make, and it is the sequel to the original anthology film entitled Shivers Down Your Spine. At first we felt shivers, now we feel chills. Same thing, I guess. And this was a screener that I received through gingernutsofhorror.com. Again, it is a great website where you can go to view a bunch of different reviews and aspects of the horror genre. Reviews on books, films, TV shows, video games, anything horror related. Go over there and check them out. And I also encourage you to check out Dead Lantern Pictures in their YouTube channel. If you just type in Dead Lantern Pictures, they'll pop up. They also have a podcast out there. I definitely want to get everyone supporting this company because they're based out in Nebraska, and when you think of the film industry, you don't think of the middle parts of the United States. Usually you're thinking about LA, California, somewhere on the west, or potentially even the east side, Atlanta, Georgia, New York City, somewhere in there, but never in the middle. So I definitely want to help support this company, so if you can go over there, if you can give them a like, give them a subscription, subscribe to their podcast. I'm really digging these anthologies. Are they perfect? Are they masterpieces? Absolutely not, but I'm loving the passion and the love that I'm seeing behind every aspect of these films. Just a group of people who love making movies, who love being behind the camera, who love being in front of the camera, and they're just shooting these short little 10 to 15 minute short films and putting it all together, and I'm having a great time. The acting again here is driving me crazy, because as a continuation from the first anthology, Shivers Down Your Spine, that came out 5 years earlier, everyone is still doing the stereotypical universal responses when they're asked questions. Or again, if I need to think about something, I need to physically put my finger on my chin, as if I'm Jim Carrey in The Grinch. Yes. And we're also getting a lot of combatantness in our reactions between our actors and the conflict of the scene. What I'm noticing with all of these actors is that, oh, well, if there's conflict, then the initial reaction is to be angry and annoyed, and just basically when I'm delivering my line, just go, well, why didn't we just go down this road then? God. In every single short story, there is that kind of response, and it's really annoying the first time you hear it, and then, like, the second or third time, it's really not cool. I just wish there was an overall direction towards the actors that allowed them to, hey, explore different reactions, and explore different ways to deliver your lines as opposed to being angry and annoyed, because every other actor and actress in these short films are doing the exact same thing. And like I said with the first anthology film, I said that there were problems with editing. This film also does suffer from that, where you can tell that a take has completed, but the camera is still lingering on their faces because they are holding until the camera finally cuts and we get to the next line of dialogue. There's just a little break there, and I think the editing could just tighten it up a little bit and cut out those unwanted negative spaces where there's no dialogue happening. And I also noticed several issues with the sound. I think a little bit more so in Shivers Down Your Spine, and here it improved a little bit. Still some issues though, where there are some times where you're hearing dialogue between characters quite nicely and plainly, like you are right now.
And then sometimes it sounds like the microphone is right up next to the people and it's blaring everything out.
Or sometimes it sounds completely muted, as you can hear right now. Like I said, this is a small film company where a lot of these people are learning the aspects of filmmaking and learning the aspects of how to shoot scenes, of how to adapt your levels for your sound in regards to the area that you're in. A lot of them are learning this. So what I'm getting from these anthology films is I'm focusing on the passion and the drive and the concepts of the art that I'm seeing on screen, as opposed to comparing this to a Rosemary's Baby or a Poltergeist film. Films that have directors and technical directors and producers that have really refined their craft. And that's what I encourage from you if you choose to download this film. It is available on Amazon right now for digital download. Go into this aspect thinking that, hey, this is a small film company and they just love making films. So with all that stuff out of the way, I think just like last time, let's go through each short story and talk about what I saw and what I liked. Kicking things off, we have the road trip, which is the wraparound story arc that is connecting all of these stories together, making this whole chills down your spine film a film. Jeff, who was the original guy who found the lamp in the last anthology film, is now searching for another lamp, and he finds one, I guess, at an arcade, and he gets all the tickets, and he buys the lamp. It was actually a pretty funny circumstance, because I remember when I went to arcades, seeing that guy who was in his late 30s, maybe early 40s, playing all the games and combining all the tickets when I was, like, in my teens. Thinking like, what are you still doing here, dude? But I guess if you're going after a genie, that makes sense. Because he wants to find Sabia and he wants to be with her. But this is not her lamp, this is her sister's Maktuna, who's the same actress, except she's blonde. And a little bit more dumb-witted. The road trip is their adaptation, basically, of the Odyssey. Jeff and Maktunia, they get into their car and they drive around searching for Sabia, and they run into a Cyclops, they run into a Siren, until eventually they wind up finding her and saving her, and everything is goody-goody. Except for a little cliffhanger that makes us wait for the third film, which I guess is called Tingles Down Your Spine? Which, I guess it's gonna be like an ASMR type film? With all the tingles, tingles, tingles down your spine. Again, I think Jeff and Matunia, they have good chemistry with each other. I like how they tried to bash reviewers of the first Shivers Down Your Spine film, because I guess when that film was released, there were a couple of critics that didn't like how many women were naked in the film, so they were totally bashing on critics and reviewers. Hopefully I'm not put into that category, because I quite appreciated the nudity in the first one, and I appreciate the nudity that I see in this film, too. I don't know, we all have the same body parts, I don't know what the big deal is. And our second short story, it's actually the second part of the wraparound story called Come On Baby, Light My Flame. Sabia's lamp appears in the house of a serial killer, and when he rubs the lamp, she appears, and he chains her up to a table, ready to dissect her, I guess. I never really knew what he was doing. Mainly because the actor who played this serial killer, he's wearing this mask, and for whatever reason he made the choice to have this really high and annoying shouting voice. Like, all he was doing was shouting the entire time. No levels. This actor was just right up here for this character the whole time. My God, I wanted to strangle him. Our third short story, and actually the first one of the stories that are being told, because as Jeff is going around on his Odyssey, he wants to hear a couple of more horror stories, because he's a horror story fanatic, so this is the first one that Matunia tells him. And it's a bunch of thieves journeying across a desolate land with all of the gold that they had stolen from this man's land, and they're trying to outrun this man. Shot in the style of a Western. It sucks because this film started off with the first story, and in my opinion, it's the worst of the anthology. Of course, every anthology has to have the worst of all the stories. Just for me, it started off with that, so well, let's just get it out of the way and let's move on. It's an interesting little Western. There's backstabbing, there is amputations, which was actually pretty hilarious. It actually starts off when there is a drifter and an old timer. It's nighttime, and the drifter comes along and just wants to have conversation. And then the old timer tells him the story of the Devil's Corkscrew. So it is a story within a story within a story. It's layered like that. It almost seemed like a metaphor for purgatory. I wasn't really connecting with this one. It's fine. You just get past it, and the film only gets better from here. Next up is Isabelle Returns, which was a shocker when I was watching this film. All of a sudden, the screen turns and we get to an animated picture, which blew my mind. I mean, this a major step up from the first anthology. And it's a frickin' creepy-ass story about this undead zombie-like character called Isabelle, and these gravediggers dig her up for whatever reason. I forget if they explained it. But she wakes up and she wreaks havoc and starts killing everyone in the vicinity. I guess it's a sequel to an animated short that they had done, not part of any of these anthologies, but I guess not many people watched it, and it wasn't well received. But this one, I think it's a major step up, especially with this first story that we got with this anthology. I think this one was really, really cool. Again, we have sound issues here. Some people sound fine, some people sound distant, and some people sound like they're right next to the microphone. And other than that, I think the animation is really, really cool. Next up is a short story called The Ditch, and what I really love from films, especially if you pull it off well, is how simplistic a storyline and how simplistic a conflict can be. This story is extremely simple. The notes on this short story, they just had this long stretch of road, and figuring out, hey, what can we do on this long stretch of road? Let's have a ditch that can eat people. It reminded me a lot of, like, Stephen King short stories. Of course, if I was a good movie reviewer, I would have done research so I can actually speak intelligently about this, but I remember listening to an audiobook of one of Stephen King's novels where there's a car on the side of the road, and if you go into it kind of looking for someone just to check and see if they were okay, the car starts eating you. That's kind of the vibe that I was getting with this film. There's a woman that emerges from a ditch and she's covered in blood. A trucker comes along, tries to help her, and then he gets freaked out and starts driving, goes down the road and sees a car pulled over, and it's a guy who doesn't have blood all over his clothing, and you can start to sense that there's some connection between the guy and the girl with all the blood. I don't want to spoil it for you because I actually really enjoy this. This was one of my favorites of the anthology. Next up is Bed and Breakfast. This is probably my favorite one of this entire film. A woman who is caught in a storm finds this bed and breakfast and begs and pleads to be put up for the night, and the butler who answers the door graciously accepts. All free of charge, too. Which, like, wow, that's nice to see. Nice people in horror films. That never turns out biting them in the ass. But this introduced me to the lead actress of this short story, Anastasia August, who I have a brand new crush now when it comes to celebrities and people in film. She is quite stunning. And as she stays at the bed and breakfast, she starts sensing that not all is right with the butler. We have zombies, we have ghouls, we have a lot of cool cinematography actually. A lot of cool colors and a lot of cool camera angles of when the zombie is just creeping down the hallway. It doesn't even seem like they're walking, they're just strolling down on rollerblades. Again, it's a simple plot and it's shot beautifully. It is shot with a lot of cool intentions. Again, Anastasia August is, I think, stunning and very beautiful, so anytime that she's on screen, I'm like, yeah, this is probably my favorite of the whole anthology, and I guess there's a black and white version of this if you buy the Blu-ray, so I'm definitely going to be hitting Dead Lantern Pictures up to see how I go about ordering that. Next up is an actual intermission that we have for this film, because I did not say this film is 2 hours and 49 minutes long. Yes, I believe it is longer than The Dark Knight Rises. But in this short story, in its intermission, they're giving you the option of, yes, it's a long film, but guess what? It's an anthology. You can stop it after each story if you want to take a break. Here's an actual intermission that you can take, so stop complaining that it's long. I don't know, you guys are poking the bear when it comes to the viewers of this film, not just the movie reviewers and critics who actually write reviews on this thing. You're kind of just poking at the audience. I'd say just ease up a little bit. It may be fun for you, but I could definitely see a viewer out there going like, well, fuck you! But this is where they announced that, yes, we're going to be doing a third anthology, and I think they said a third and final one called Tingles Down Your Spine. If you do purchase Chills Down Your Spine on Amazon, and I also think Shivers Down Your Spine too, all the proceeds are going to go to funding that third film, so if you want to just support independent filmmaking, definitely check these one out. I'm going to be doing it. I'll probably contact them to see how much more is it for the physical copy, because as you can tell, I like my physical media. Hysteria is about a bunch of women who come over to a house for Halloween night, and one by one they start disappearing because they start finding their dead selves around the house. Yes, that makes sense. This was like the whodunit of the entire anthology. It was kind of done in the style of Clue, where you were finding out, like, what room were they killed in, and how were they killed, and who killed them. Which was a cool concept. There was this weird ventriloquist doll that apparently just talks by itself, and everyone kind of just went along with it, which was confusing to me. But just like I talked about with Shivers Down Your Spine, you can tell in this film that we're filming these scenes in someone else's house, and the set is not decorated to pertain itself to the characters in the scene. It's just, hey, this is a friend's house and they let us shoot here. Because there's stuff on the walls, there's things in the living room that I'm like, really? Would everyone have these items in their house. I don't know. It reminded me of when I shot short films on my camcorder growing up, where I had basically all my parents' furnitures and all my parents' dolls in the living room and everywhere, kind of just in the background, because it was there, just it had to be, because it was hers. That's what this one is, but it's still a good time. And next up is Blood Model, which I think is a contender for my favorite. I think it's just neck and neck with Bed and Breakfast. We have a group of artists at the studio, and they're all painting a nude model. And all of them are pretty easygoing and very professional, but then there is one weird artist kind of sitting over in the corner who freaks out whenever someone talks about how hot the nude model is, or talking about asking them out to drinks, or giving them their phone number. You leave her alone. She's my girlfriend. Like some major stalker syndrome shit right there. But as the short film goes along, everyone starts disappearing one by one by one. And the resolution of this short film, I think, is really, really cool. It's an aspect of art and one's extension of oneself. That's what art is. So if anything, it's a metaphor for that, and I really appreciate it. Not to mention that there's a lot of blood. So in translation, there's a lot of corn syrup with red dye in it. And throats being slit. But again, from what I've noticed from other horror films is that, hey, we want to accent the blood coming out of the person's throat. But it's not done realistically where, hey, my throat is cut. My initial reaction is to close the wound, to close it up. Tom Hardy in Lawless, when his throat is cut, his initial reaction is, hey, I'm going to close it up as tight as possible. Here, it's just, oh god, oh god, oh god. Not realistically. But I still really like this short story. The Whirlpool of Night. Done in the film noir style that we saw in one of the short stories of Shivers Down Your Spine, where a crime lord hires an investigator to steal something from someone. This one, it was a little hard to follow for me because a lot of the actresses, when it was done in black and white, look very similar, so I had trouble differentiating between the characters. It turns out we get some vampires in here, so I'm always down for a good vampire story, you know, when they don't sparkle. And this one had the most action out of all the stories. We see a lot of gunfight and a lot of stunts and choreography, so I definitely appreciate it for that, but it's just kind of the middle of the road of all these short stories for me. And then our final short story is The Calling of Things Beyond, where a playwright, desperate for an idea, unlocks her father's very old trunk that contained his famous typewriter and part of an unfinished draft of a play. It has a bunch of actual, real-life sadistic chants that open up a portal to another dimension. I think I'm realizing that with Chills Down Your Spine, when it comes to these short stories, it started and it also ended on a negative note for me, anyway. This one we had a lot of possessions, we had a lot of talking, they were in the same theater as I think the last short story of the first anthology film took place in. But being a theater professor and being a former director and a former actor of the stage, just seeing how rehearsals were being conducted here, it drove me crazy. I'm like, oh my god, no, you don't rehearse like that. This is where we get a ton of fun prosthetics too. We have eyeballs kind of popping out of people's shoulders and people's heads, and you know what's the thing to do when that happens? Well, we pinch it as if it's a pimple. I'm not big on the whole pimple popping thing. I know there's like a whole like Dr. Pimple Popper YouTube channel where it's like a fetish for people. To me, even just talking about it is giving me a gag reflex. I want to vomit right now just thinking about it and thinking about how it looked like in the actual short story. Yeah, but this opens another portal to another dimension, and monsters and creepish things are coming through it, and our world is being sucked in. We'll see if it goes anywhere in the third anthology, Tingles Down Your Spine. But that's it. We're left on a cliffhanger when it comes to Jeff, Mactunia, and Sabia. Not going to spoil what that cliffhanger is, but I definitely want to see more from this universe. Again, this is nothing spectacular. It's nothing that's great. It's just a bunch of people that love making movies. You're seeing that passion on screen. What sucks, though, is that it usually takes about 5 years for this thing to get done, so we're not going to get Tingles Down Your Spine until 2025. if we're all still here by then. I definitely recommend checking it out. If you're into indie films, if you're into independent horror, I mean, this is for you. I'm gonna give Chills Down Your Spine 3 out of 5 Blu-rays.
Not exactly what I had in mind, but not bad.
Alright guys, now comes my favorite part of my videos where I randomly select which movie I'm going to be watching next. This is going to be the last Halloween film that we're going to be doing for the month of October, so let's take a look. Ready or Not! Awesome! I have heard awesome things about this film, but I have not gotten around to watching it. Again, another film that I have purchased and just never watched before. Finally gonna get around to it now. I heard it was just one of those surprise films that came out of nowhere. Watching trailers, you're like, that looks like crap. But everyone that went to see it was like, that was actually pretty freaking good. So we'll check that one out next time. Hey, if any of you have recommendations of films that you want me to review on here, leave your comment below this video, or go to my Facebook page, my Instagram, or my Twitter. Leave your recommendation there. If I have access to it, I will watch, review it, and give you a shout out on the channel. And if you really want me to do your recommendation as quickly as possible, you can make a PayPal donation on the main page of my YouTube channel. Any size donation will do. Attach your movie to your donation, and if I have access to it, I will watch it, review it, and get your review published as quickly as I possibly can. So guys, have you seen Chills Down Your Spine? Hell, have you seen Shivers Down Your Spine? Both available on Amazon right now. Whatever you thought, comment below, let me know what you thought about it. And as always, if you like what you see here, if you like my take on movies, then hit the subscribe button and make sure you hit that bell so you'll know the next time I release my next movie review. So guys, I will see you next time with my review of Ready or Not. So in the meantime, be well, be good to each other, and go watch a movie. Take care, guys.